Hey my frugal friends, welcome and welcome back to my channel. Frugality is life. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please make sure that you hit that like button and that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Okay guys, it's time to get serious. I figured I needed to make this video for everyone who just want to think about what's happening in our current economic world and how it really affects us, right? We are a budgeting community, so I would be remiss if I did not comment on what is going on. Of course, I'm not going to go into politics because I just won't, but because there's a lot I could say, but we're not going to go into that. We're going to talk strategically about tariffs and our budget, okay? Because regardless whether you think it's going to touch you or not, I'm here to tell you that it absolutely will, because the effects of tariffs can be long-standing, and they can be direct and they can be indirect, and they can be something that takes effect right away, which means it affects you directly now or down the road. It does have effects. So let's go into it, right? What are tariffs? So tariffs is a tax that's imposed by a government of a country on imports or exports of goods. So tariffs have been around for ages because it's something that's used in trade, but usually they are small amounts. They're never not usually double-digit tariffs, right? Those are usually rare, like what we are facing right now with 20% and 15% and 10% and whatever. So those are usually rare, and so they're usually a percentage on or of the value of goods, right? So usually a percentage that's charged on the goods or off the goods. So say you're saying a good, something costs $20, you're going to charge a percentage of that 20, or you're just going to impose a percentage regardless of the cost of the goods, okay? So usually the importing business pays the government this tax. So if you are importing, you're gonna pay this tax, or if you're exporting, you pay the tax, right? Depends on which way it goes. But we're gonna talk for simplicity right now about importing, like those who are importing and who pays that tax, okay? So what are the effects of tariffs? So tariff really affects the consumers and they affect businesses, right? And overall, it affects the economic activities that happens in a country. So, for example, for consumers, you may see higher prices in, things that are imported into the country. And then you as consumers may have less options for competitions or for competitive advantages, right? So if you are only reliant on domestic production, you may not have a lot of options, because usually domestic productions are a little bit more pricey, and so a country may import at a cheaper rate in order to give consumers variety and like lower costs, right? So overall, it affects the economic activity. So it's raising production costs. There may be job losses, there may be disruptions in trade and supply chain, and it may harm the economic growth of a country. Sometimes it causes harm in the short term, right? So who pays tariffs? So tariffs are again, they are usually passed on to consumers, but they're paid by businesses. So if you are looking for ways to reduce your costs pertaining to your budget, I'm going to give you some tips, so stay around for that, okay? So what are some benefits of tariffs? So the countries or the government will counter source, which means they will look elsewhere for goods that they can import at lower prices, or that doesn't have a tariff or has a lower tariff percentage attached to it, right? So that is a benefit, which meaning if you are dependent on a particular country for import, and now they have a tariff like what we are seeing right now between, you know, a lot of countries and the US. Countries may go elsewhere to find the products and try to import it at a cheaper rate, so consumers may have access to, you know, cheaper items, cheaper goods. So that's diversification of like market, right? And trade. The other thing is it's usually a source of revenue for the government of that country that is imposing the tax. So you impose a tariff, you collect the revenues off this, right? As the government. So it also can protect domestic, you know, industries from foreign competitors, because as I said, like when companies import, it's usually at a cheaper rate that they import, and so to give you the consumers cheaper alternatives to something that's produced domestically and maybe more expensive, right? So when these imports are coming in at a higher rate, essentially you're saying, you know, importers will reduce the amount of imports because of the cost, right? So that's that. So it will encourage more domestic production. Now these will happen, but it takes time. Like it's not as at the drop of a hat that these things happen, and it can have long-term effects on the economy if you're not given enough time to position the consumers within the country, or given enough time to position the market for something like this. So usually these things are considered over a lengthy period of time, and strategically you put in buffers until you get there, right? It's never usually something that is like full-blown double digits and going to effect like quite quickly, because you want to give consumers enough time to adjust, businesses enough time to counter source, and also a government may give themselves enough time to find diversification within their local market. So it's not usually something that is fast and furious. It's usually something that comes with thought and strategic like decision making in order to ensure that, you know, your people in your country are not like quickly sort of impacted like that. Like you have a plan, right? And then you act against that plan over a period of time. Okay, so the effects of tariffs are mixed. So both businesses and individuals will be negatively impacted by higher prices. However, it kind of protects the domestic industry, but you as the consumer, regardless, you're going to pay a little bit more. So whether it's sourced domestically or internationally, you are going to pay a little bit more, because we all know why we buy and import things is to get a lower cost. So when you are having to source domestically, you're going to have to pay more. So that's pretty much the effects, right? You, the consumer, have to adjust because you are going to pay more. Let's talk about tariffs now and or budget, because we're the budgeting community. We have to talk about this. So we will be impacted. One way or another, we will be impacted. So my tips to you, and what I'll be doing as well, is to ensure that, you know, I budget, you know, on one income. I will try to do that in case of a job loss, because things like this can affect jobs. We are watching, the world is watching and seeing what is happening, and there are so many job losses already happening. And with all the tariffs that are being imposed with, you know, to other countries, there could be more job losses as well. So yeah, just get yourself ready. Try, if you can, if you are able, and you are a 2-income household, try to see how you can budget and live off 1 income and save the rest, because we never know what will happen, right? Try to buy locally produced items if possible, and as I said, these will still be at a premium, but try to buy those items if you can. And I'm in Canada, I must say that, like, I am in Canada, and so in Canada there's a whole movement to buy local and to buy items that are produced here. And it has catch on very fast, very furious. When you go into the stores, items that are imported from the US are not being touched at all, or just barely being touched, and a lot of locally produced or manufactured alternatives are being sold more. So when you go into the grocery store, a lot of the grocery store chains have made it a point of duty to identify items that are locally manufactured and produced, so people are able to go to those items and support local. And then the items that are produced in the US are also being identified, so people are actually staying away from those items. So that's what's happening in Canada. So Canadians are purchasing from Canada. They're purchasing from everywhere else, to be honest, except the US. So items that are coming from Mexico, they may be coming from El Salvador, they may be coming from Venezuela, wherever they are coming from, Colombia. Canadians are purchasing those items, and they're actually leaving the items from the US on the shelves. So that's how people here in Canada are purchasing locally since the threat of tariffs. So yeah, the next tip I will have for you guys is to keep your expenses low. Like, we've always been trying to do this. Now it's essential. Make sure that you are tracking to ensure that you're finding opportunities to reduce if possible. The other big tip I will have for you guys: as the stock market dips, if you have disposable income, invest, because this is usually how wealth is transferred. So when the stock market dips, it's usually temporary, never for a very, very long time. So if you have money secured and you are educated in investing, make sure you invest in good stocks. Make sure you do your research, but take advantage. If you are able and if you have disposable income, you can invest, because this is usually how wealth is transferred. So I want to go into a bit of some of the items that we are going to see more that we're going to see the prices increase on, like car and car parts. Like, we know Mexico, Canada, and the US have a trading arrangement that was signed and agreed upon by the US government, Trump, back in 2018. And this allowed for the flow of different things in trade, right? So car and car parts being moved from Canada to the US to Mexico and back in order to assemble and manufacture vehicles. So car parts, those are going to be more expensive. Going to be more expensive. I know, like, for us in Canada, it's going to affect us if we buy imported produce from the US, but we have alternative, like Mexico. So if we buy these items from the US, we're going to see them become more pricey. Things like tequila and beer from Mexico going to the US is going to be more pricey because they're retaliatory tariffs, right? Things like electronics, phones, furniture, clothes, and toys from China going to the US going to cost more. Not Canada, because Canada is literally has announced counter tariffs with the US. So literally, it's the US against all these nations, right? The US against Mexico, US against China, US against Canada, US against Colombia, etc. So the US is going to see a lot of these items inflate in price. Canada will as well, because we get items like alcohol from the US, aluminum, like we export items like aluminum, steel, and different things. So we need to brace ourselves, and we need to prepare. In closing to all of this, I must say that, as I mentioned before, I am Canadian. I migrated from Jamaica to Canada, and I have never been more proud of a nation that I've been today. I am very proud to say that I am Canadian, and I'm very proud of what's happening and how we are actually banding together in order to get through this difficult time. So I am absolutely proud to say that. And yeah, as I said, I am Jamaican Canadian, But I'm extremely proud to say that I am Canadian because of how I've seen us now, how I see Canada. And I mean, we have our issues too, but right now Canadians are coming together in order to get through this, and I am extremely proud to say I am Canadian. Yeah, so never ever the 51st state. Okay, so anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep budgeting, stay frugal, and we're all good. Bye.